Hello, I'm Alex the Blender Master, and this is a very special tutorial just for you, my friends. Let me tell you something, I've been away from creating new videos for about a week, mostly because I got all set with sore throat and sneezing all these days. Not in creative mood, you know, but there's something special that kept me all warm and moody, kept me cheered up. We all love hamburgers, and today we're gonna make one special vegan kind of hamburger, very tasty and juicy. So stick around, I'm sure you're gonna enjoy this video. Especially if you're lonely and love hamburgers just the way I do. Let's start from this empty scene. I'm sure we all love the default cube, I know you do, but for this time we're gonna free up some space for even more love. So I'll go by adding a new sphere, and this will be our starting point. So now I'm not so lonely, I already have a sphere to work on. I'll squish it by z-axis so we have something that closely resembles a bun. I select all bottom vertices and scale them down even more so we have this dome-like shape, just like a real hamburger. Okay, looks nice. Let's take this piece and move it up a bit to free up some space for a bottom bun. I always want my objects to be properly aligned with their origins, and now I'm moving whole mesh so we have its origin at the bottom side. Now I'll make a copy of that object and move it down. Let's scale down top of it so it's completely flat to fit our delicious topping, which comes next. Now we can switch to solid mode to see what we have so far. Need to move these vertices just a tiny bit till we achieve the perfect shape. Let's move it up so it sits flat on x-axis. And we have about 1 unit distance in between. Some final tweaks, and it seems like we have our buns done. That was exciting, wasn't it? Well, we're not even halfway through, but I promise, fun part is about to come. Okay, let's give some love to our camera down here. I'll move it about 2 units down and rotate it to point straight at these tasty buns. Move just a bit higher, and let's switch to random properties and set up our output image size. Now let's dive in camera settings and see how we can improve it. I'll increase focal length to 70 to zoom in and go down here to enable depth of field effect. Now I'll go to viewport display settings and turn on limits checkbox so I can see where is the focus point of my camera. See? Now it's way behind the hamburger, and we don't want that. Let's tweak this focus distance slider to put it right at the buns, like that. Alright, need to move camera up just a tiny bit. Let's create some backdrop so our hamburger doesn't float in the air. I'll start by creating a plane and scale it up to about 6 units wide. Now I select rear edge and just extrude it a few times to create a slope like that. Need to change its shading to smooth as well. Okay, looks nice. I'll add one more edge here to fix shading of the slope. Now we can start tweaking lights. We're gonna need a bunch of them to light up our scene all warm and cozy. I'll put some real powerful key lights on the left. Now, no need to be precise here, you can just look at the numbers I'll be typing in, but I really recommend you to uncover your creative mind and play around with lights until you're satisfied with how it looks. So on the left I'm planning to put 2 key lights placed at different heights, so we light up side and a bit from the top as well. To give our scene a really cozy mood, I'll try using warm colors like shades of yellow. Now we also need to light up rear side of our hamburger, so these kinds of lights are called backfill lights. And we need to make them less powerful. Also, I don't really like to see any specular reflections from the backfill light, so I'll disable that. For backfill lights, I'll increase radius of the point light to make their shadows much smoother. And the last one, a bit in front. You see, right now I'm not sure where to put them. Even with all my experience, every project is a lot of playing around. For this light, I'll give it a bit pink shade of hue, and you'll soon understand why. Finally, let's start working on scene materials. I'll switch to the shader editor and set world's background color to dark red. You can see straight away it's affecting our shadows by turning them red. The next thing I want to do is to apply subdivision modifier to our buns to make them real smooth. And the bottom one as well. Okay, now I go to the render properties panel and let's turn on ambient occlusion effect. And bloom as well. I'll increase radius and intensity just a bit. Let's check our shadows. Okay, I'll increase their quality. Need to also enable screen space reflections. I usually tweak these sliders to get rid of all possible artifacts. Now let's select our bun and create our first material. We're gonna need a couple of textures, and I have some prepared already. Connect it to the base color input, and need to wait while it's catching up. Okay, it seems distorted. Let's fix that. I'll add the texture coordinate node and link it up with the texture mapping node. Now we can tweak scale input to get rid of these stretch marks. It's time to add some bumps. I'll load up a second texture and connect it with the mapping node. Next we add the bump node and connect it with the shader. It doesn't seem to do anything. Let me check. Maybe we need color ramp to increase contrast of the bump texture. No, still nothing. That's strange. Oh, I'm sorry, wrong socket. I'll decrease strength and distance. We don't need to be that bumpy, but rather soft and squishy. Now we need to fix projection mapping. I'll switch it to a box and increase blend to about 1. For bump textures you should switch sRGB space to linear. And let's go up here and increase subsurface just a little bit. Need to check that we have high scatter radius for our red channel. Now I want to decrease roughness to about 0.3 so we can see some specular reflections from our key lights. Okay, what's next? I want to add one more texture mapping node. We're gonna make our buns even more delicious by blending in some additional textures. Here I have a very special texture hidden for this exceptional moment. We need to adjust some projection settings, and I'll connect it straight away to see what we're doing. And one more texture for bump. I'll free up some space around to put these new nodes, and I'll connect with the texture mapping nodes the same way we did for the color channel. We also need to change projection mode to the same we have in the color texture. Now I want to make its shading even softer. To do that, I'll add a layer weight node and use it to mix over some colors. If you're seeing one of my previous tutorials on skin shading, You're probably aware of what I'm trying to achieve right now. I'll use color ramp to transform layer weight values and use them as a mask for a brighter color. Now I want this color to be something slightly blue to give that soft look. I can use this color ramp sliders to fine-tune fellow of that effect we've just created. Finally, it's time to mix all these textures together. First we need to create some masks to control how we're gonna blend them. I'm gonna use just a linear gradient texture node for that, but we'll also need a texture mapping node. It's to control scale and rotation of the gradient. Here's our linear gradient texture, and color ramp to adjust its position and fall off. Now connect everything together and set blending mode to multiply. Okay, if I change it to red, we should start seeing it. Yeah, here from the right side. We definitely need to rotate our gradient sideways. I'll rotate it 90 degrees by y-axis. Now I can't see anything. Let me play with this scale slider. Let's set it to 2 for now and go change our color ramp. Seems like we need some object to control its position. I will go with an empty. I'll move it up to be in between these bands and also reduce its size just a bit, and select from the drop down list in texture coordinates node. Alright, let's get back to our color ramp to add more stops and wrap it up from the both sides. White color is where we're gonna have this red shade applied. I'm trying to put it right in the middle. I'll change it to a B-spline to make fall off even softer. Already looks nice, but I want to play with the scale a bit. Maybe we can improve it even more. So we can either use texture mapping node to readjust scale and position of the gradient, or we can just use that empty object, deciding it also affects scale of texture coordinates. Okay, I'm satisfied with what we've done so far. Now I'm gonna use the same mask to blend our textures together. I'll add one more mixRGB node and connect both textures to its input sockets, and connect our mask as a factor input. Also, let's group all these mask nodes. Need to organize things a little so we don't mess up everything. Besides, it's easier to navigate if you group them like that. Let's free up some space around for even more nodes. Now I'll join our textures at this color mix node and connect mask as a blending factor. Let's also use the same color channel for a specular. I'll mix our color textures, but with slight brightness adjustment through one more color mix node. We don't need it to be that bright. Let's fix it by selecting a darker color in this last color mix node we just added. Okay, I think it looks nice. Oh, I need to change color space of this bump texture to linear. And now let's revisit our bump node. I don't really like how sharp it looks at the moment. Let's play with a color ramp to reduce its contrast and make those bumps softer. Just look how it changes when I'm moving these sliders. Good, we're done with the mask and finally we can go back here and replace this color to something more natural, like this one. Okay, let's move on. Now I'll create new material for our background mesh. Nothing fancy here, just a red color with some subsurface applied to make it look real soft. Let's check if we have our normals pointing the right way. Mistakes happen sometimes, so we better be sure they're facing our camera. Okay, seems fine to me. I want to add subsurface modifier so we have more polygons to smooth out that slope. Need to select those corner edges and press Shift E and 1 to make them sharp. Okay, let's disable specular as well. We don't need any reflections on the background. Also, don't forget to save your work time to time. It's a real mood killer if you worked for hours on your project and then lost everything because of some silly mistake. Something looks fishy about these bumps. Let me try something real quick, maybe with different color space it will look better. Okay, finally it's time to make this hamburger a real hamburger. I'm looking into adding 2 fine slices of ham in between these buns. What do you think? I'll start by creating this mesh disk. We could adjust some options to make it filled with polygons, but let me do it manually using the extrude and merge tool. Now let's select all these edges and subdivide it a couple of times. Now all magic will happen in modifiers, so let's add a subdivision to increase poly count. And displace to move all these vertices around. Let's open textures panel and create as a new displacement texture. I'll call it a disp ham and go with a wood texture noise. Don't overthink much here, just use these values I'm typing in. Now let's go back to modifiers panel and select our new texture. Just need to change the settings to keep our slice in place. Now let's go to UV editor and project us some unwrap to use with the displacement texture. I'll scale it up just a little. Okay, we clearly need to reduce the displacement power and also set smooth shading to all these faces. Now we have this thin slice of ham, but how we can extrude it? Let's use a solidify modifier for that. I'll change thickness to beef it up and also increment rim crease on the edge data panel. And let's add one more subdivision modifier to smooth it out. I'll move it down to lay it over the bun, and let's make a copy to create a second slice. Now we need to rotate it by Z-axis and scale it up just a little so it doesn't look repetitive. Well, we're not done just yet. Need to assign some delicious ham material to these fine beefy slices. I'll assign it to the both slices. And let's go back to the shader editor to create some nodes. I'll go the usual way with the texture coordinates, mapping, image texture node, this time for BAM channel. Let's reduce the strength and change texture protection mode to box. To make it look natural, we need to change those colors to something meaty and pink. Just type in the same colors I'm using. And let's also increase subsurface effect. Now, since we want our ham to be wet and juicy, we need to increase its specular value to 1, reduce roughness, and set clear cut also to 1. And let's also increase transmission. Subsurface scattering is not passing enough light, and I want it to be all flashy and soft just inside of these crevices. Just look how transmission shader is affecting its shading. Okay, 0.24 seems right to me. I'll rotate these slices by Z-axis just a tiny bit. Let's see if we can find a better orientation facing our camera. Oh, never mind, it was already perfect. I'll keep that. Now let's save our scene and do something else. I know most of people would hate to spot a strand of hair in the hamburger, even I sometimes. But I also know that there are some people who love to eat the hamburgers all hairy. You know, we're all different, you never can satisfy everyone's taste. And this section is for those very special people. I'll show you how to put some hair on your hamburger, just in case if you're one of them. Maybe even if you're not, you might watch this video and decide, oh, I love my hamburgers with some bushes. Who knows, you never can tell how we change our preferences. So I started by adding a new particle system and new material for it. I know sometimes I tend to work too quick for someone to follow all steps, but you can always go back and check the settings I typed in. Now let's go to the material settings and switch blend mode to alpha hashed. Let's also try tweaking shape of hair strands. Now this bush might seem too much, but don't you worry, I'm aware of that. That's why let's create a new vertex group. We're gonna use it to control the density of our hair. Now we need to scroll way down to select this vertex group in hair properties, and we can start weight painting. I start painting with weight 1 at the crown of the hamburger. Let's reduce count of hairs, and now we switch to the smear tool to make a smoother transition from zero density to the most dense area at the top. Good, but really it's not. We never have hair sticking out like that. Let's fix that by going to the children section of hair properties and adjusting the kink value. We never have a perfect hair there, especially now hamburgers. See, now it looks more natural. And if we adjust velocity tangent, we can force them to stretch closer to the top. Okay, now we can have all hair strands of the same length, unless they were cut by a hair clipper. But who trims hamburgers? Some crazy person probably. Let's make it more realistic by adding one more group to control hair length. We do the same way, create a new vertex group and go down in settings to assign it to the length property. Now we want to paint kinda similar pattern, highest weight at the crown, and blur it out to create a smooth fell-off around. I'm painting strokes with blur brush to spread that dense area we have in the middle. Alright, now it really looks like something. Let's go back to paint some minor tweaks. I'm using the same blur brush, but this time on the density vertex group. Seems like it's not affecting much since this area is already blurred a lot. So let's switch to a smear brush and try spreading these weights closer to the corner. And now I'll switch back to the blur brush to work on the sides. I want to achieve a smoother transition so we can have a very short hair as well. Now, as you have probably guessed, red is the highest weight and it goes through yellow down to blue, where we have the lowest weight. Now I'll switch between groups to make sure that they are kinda similar, and hair in the most dense area has also the longest length. I'll also revisit our density group, so we have most of our hair at the crown. Okay, I've got so carried away, I almost painted over the region with the highest weight. Let's bring it back. Don't be afraid to experiment and release your creative spirit. Just a matter of taste. Someone loves kinky hair, someone short. You know, just play with it. Now, if I look from the top at the hamburger, our weight group seems asymmetrical. Let's fix it using smear tool. And blur it out in the end. Now let's check what we have in our density group. It also looks irregular and kinda shifted more to the camera side, so we need to fix that as well. I don't really like that red circle in the middle. I want a smoother transition, so let's use blur tool to soften its edges. Okay, looks much better. but I want to pinch it a little towards crown area. So it's the only region which has most of the hair. So I'm using smear brush to draw strokes going from the sides to the top of the hamburger, and a little bit of blur to smooth it out. You might think we're giving away too much attention to the hair, but I say there is no limit to perfection. Yeah, I almost forgot to turn on this long hair checkbox. It really makes a difference on how hair shape is rendered. I also need to find another similar checkbox, can't see it right now. Oh, here it is, B-spline needs to be turned on as well to have smoother hair strands. I'll just tweak some values here to increase frequency of braiding. Now, I'm not really satisfied how hair is displayed. It's way too thin and not reacting to any changes to the hair shape. I must be missing something else. Let's find out. Everything looks fine here, but it seems not to be affected by changes of these hair shape parameters. Probably it's in the render settings. Yeah, always select strip render mode for your hair. Now they render as polygonal meshes, and just look what a huge difference it makes. Okay, now I would add even more hair at the top. Seems I just can't get enough. Probably I'm that kind of person who is into hairy hamburgers. Now just look what I'll do next. We're using mostly blur and smear tools, and because of that it's way too uniform now. Let me select a specific weight and manually put some hair where I need it. Add some real artistic touch, you know. So I set weight slider to about 0.5 and put some hairy spots all around, mostly on the side, which is facing our camera. And now I'll switch to the length group and let's do some manual tweaks here as well. First I'll paint some fixes and then use blur tool to smooth everything out. Finally, hair placement looks good to me. And the last thing, let's increase velocity normal just a little. Okay, let me play with these UVs to increase size of displacement texture, features on that slice of ham, and perhaps decrease strength just a little. I'm looking for some ways on how to make these folds softer. And now the final step. I was talking about juicy ham all the way along, but right now it's really not that juicy, is it? Let's fix that by placing some liquid droplets over. I'll start by creating a metaball object. And I just love metaballs. You might have guessed that from my previous tutorials. They are just perfect for modeling organic and liquid things. Need to scale it down so we have a small droplet of ham juice. Let's work on its shader. I'll put our metaball closer to the mesh so we can test how it will refract its surface. And let's set it all white with a slightly blue tint. First we need to increase specular way up so it's all shiny. And then we need to set transmission over to 1 and reduce alpha just a little. You can watch my tutorial on how to create realistic water. I explained there all these parameters and how they are affecting transparency. Now just make sure you have screen space refractions turned on right here, otherwise the trick with transmission won't work. Now that's a fine little droplet right there. I'll scale it down by x-axis to make it flat, and I'll move it away from the camera view because we're gonna use particle system to instantiate it. Let's go and create a second particle system. I'll call it a wet particles and start tweaking its parameters. First we need to set frame start and end values to 1, so we have all of them spawned right from the start. Also we should disable any physics so they don't move even if we play animation. This time our particle system won't spawn hair but particles, which we'll set to render as an object, and select our meta ball in this list. Need to change these scale values so they're not way too small. Now I can see these droplets scattered all over the surface, but let me check. I think they're not aligned with the bound surface normal. I want to fix that. Is it here? Oh, here in rotation we can set them to be aligned along normal. This is what we need. Very nice. Now let's go and create a new vertex group. We're gonna use it to control density of our droplets across the surface. Now we scroll down to select from the list. Let's rename our particles and start painting some weights. I want these droplets to be scattered around this side. Since our camera is in front, we don't need any of them in places where we can't even see them because of occluding geometry. So I'll paint my strokes only along this edge. Don't worry if you see these particles jumping around, it's just regenerating their positions every time we modify our density group. Okay, I think I'm done with the top part. Let's switch to the bottom one. I'll reuse the same particle system and add a new vertex group for density. Even if we're just copying over the same particle system, we still need to go over all these steps of linking vertex group to a density. And now we paint, the same way I did for the top one. I'll clean up down here just a little. And it's done. That was easy, wasn't it? Now I want to place some droplets over these slices of ham, so I'll basically repeat all these steps again. I'll probably reduce resolution of our meta balls. Now we have way too many of them, so if we set a higher value to these parameters, we should get a nice performance boost. Let's call this vertex group droplets density and select it from the list. Now the tricky part here is that we have lots of modifiers assigned and we need to disable them for a moment so we can paint our density weights. I want to touch on the front facing tip of the slice. It's kinda slow because of all these modifiers, but I think we did it nice. Now I'll do the same for the bottom slice. I create a new group and let's just paint it. Yeah, very slow. I think you can disable all the modifiers so it doesn't slow you down. Let's enable all of them back and just look what we've got. Do you understand now why I used metaballs for all this stuff? They fuse together when placed nearby and behave just like real water. Let me just reduce their count a little. It's amazing how easy it is to model liquid droplets using them. And let's play with scale so you can see how our metaballs are fusing together. Now I'm trying to find the right size for these metaballs, so they don't look way too huge, but also don't sit apart like sprayed over. They should form bigger droplets if placed together. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to make it like dripping wet, just trying to find the right balance so it looks appealing. Changing number of particles also might help, so it's up to you to decide which values would fit your scene the best. Of course, you can reuse the same technique to put small droplets over any other object, not just hamburgers, you know. Now, the last important thing is how we can make it even more colorful and delicious. We can go to the color management panel and change its look to a high contrast. Just look how vivid and delightful it's right now. But I understand it's just a matter of taste. Now there you go. Remember, our life has ups and downs, and love is all we need to keep us warm and cozy when you're on the lower slope of this crazy roller coaster. I hope you found this useful. So, as always, have a nice day, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more tutorials like this.